A very good evening to everybody watching. Thank you for joining us tonight on The Agenda. My name is Shiwana Ndeunyema. Tonight we are joined on the platform by Shiwana Ndeunyema. He is the acting managing director of the Namibian national oil company Namcor, which has been in the news lately, partly because he and some members of his board also convened a press conference this week on which, or at which they have availed themselves to answer a lot of questions, providing a lot of clarity on issues happening at Namcor. Shiwana, thank you for making time, really. I think the first question to you is that you have been in this hot seat for nearly 8 months now. I'm calling it a hot seat because what we see in the papers show that it's not an easy job. What can you tell us about the experience of leading a company in a state that it is for the period that you have?
Thank you very much, Toivo, and good evening to your viewers. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's really platforms like these that hold leaders accountable, and it's exactly why Namcor has agreed to attend this platform.
Sure.
So, the past 8 months has been a roller coaster. So if I go back to the time I was appointed by the board of directors in April, in the interim, I think the first thing that we did was conduct a diagnostic on the company. I think inherently I always want to understand what I'm getting myself into. And of course that diagnostic confirmed that Namcor was in a precarious financial situation. And of course, we sat with the executive management and the extended management. We locked ourselves in a room and really tried to understand what the challenge is, where it's coming from, and how can we resolve it. And that diagnostic culminated in a recovery plan. Yeah. And we identified 10 factors that had contributed to the precarious financial situation we found ourselves in. And of course, it was an exciting challenge because, what is leadership without problem solving? And I think the first thing that I was expected to do was to take accountability. And remember, these issues are coming from the previous financial year, 2022, and some are actually even going far back as 2020. But for us, it was important to take full accountability, make no excuses, no excuses, pass no blame, and seek to solve the problem whilst we figure out who the responsible parties were in terms of making some of those decisions that were borderline breach of internal controls and governance systems within the organization. So it's been exciting, albeit challenging, but I've enjoyed the support of the board of directors. I've enjoyed the support of the shareholder ministries, Mines and Energy and Ministry of Finance and Public Enterprises. And we as an executive management have been really hard at work over the past 8 months to make sure that we turn around the fortunes of the organization. And I think we've done a fairly good job because ever since April, at gross profit level, we've managed to generate positive returns, and that just confirms that our recovery plan is working. So the recovery plan does not address a fundamental problem. It really seeks to stop the bleeding and the leakages in the organization and some of the exposure. But the biggest problem is the working capital deficit. The working capital deficit is essentially a situation where you've got a creditor's book, and obviously there's not everybody has an appreciation of the financial accounting, but in simple words, the creditor's book are people that you owe money. And on this other side, you've got your debtor's book, your stock on hand, and your cash, whether it's in the bank or investments, short term. And that working capital deficit is then facilitated by an inability for your debtors, the people that owe you money, and the money that you have, and the stock to service the people that you owe money.
Yeah.
So that gap then creates a working capital deficit. But under normal circumstances, a working capital deficit is not a challenge. In fact, many organizations that I've serviced and worked for are sitting in a working capital deficit. So it's not problematic. But the size of our working capital deficit then makes it problematic, because if you are unable to service your creditors' book at the pace at which you're required, within the required payment terms, then that results in default, and that attracts interest. And that interest begins to erode your bottom line, and it further infuriates your working capital deficit, and it just digs you into a deeper hole. So over the past 8 months, we've been really preoccupied with robust sales planning and robust margin analysis to ensure that we sell profitably, so that we can reduce that working capital deficit. But the hole is quite significant to the extent that it's going to take a significant amount of trading in order to actually fill that hole. Hence our request for shareholder intervention.
Thank you, Shiwana, for that. I mean, a lot has been said about what Namcor owes its creditors, but not much has been said about what you are owed yourselves by your debtors. How does the picture look like in that regard?
So I think that's also.
Or is it so insignificant that it's not even worth mentioning how much you are owed?
So Toivo, working for a commercial public enterprise, I think there's a heightened level of confidentiality, especially when it comes to matters relating to your customers. Nobody's going to do business with you if their business is in the streets or in the corridors of the organization. So our debtors book is certainly a problem. When we talk of internal breaches of control, it's really with respect to the debtors book, where some customers were extended credit, albeit not having the right controls in place, which exposed the organization to that sort of financial exposure, and that has significantly contributed to the working capital deficit. But when we talk of an investigation that was commissioned by the board, those are some of the issues that were investigated. I think it's important to understand that Namcor, because when the public thinks of Namcor, they think of a trading company that simply just trades in petroleum products. So you've got the parent company, and then you've got the exploration and production company, the E&P company that delivers value in the upstream space. And then you've got the trading company that delivers value in the downstream space. Now, in the trading space, our job is really to ensure that we procure petroleum products at a competitive rate and ensure that you deliver a reasonable margin. And then that is essentially your profits. And that's the long and short of it. And which market or segments you seek to sell in is really dependent on the returns associated with those markets. And it really requires traders to be traders and marketers to be robust in their understanding of market dynamics. And then on the E&P side is really where we unlock value in the upstream space. So we've got carried interest and certain asset exploration assets sitting in the organization, and how do we monetize that, and how do we create value for the shareholder. But I think in the trading company, that's where the challenges lie. And we've got a flourishing E&P company, but there's a trading company that really needs a review of the operating model, because the model as it is offers the shareholder significant risk. And we've developed a turnaround strategy to address such risks. And the turnaround strategy is a three-phase turnaround strategy. The turnaround strategy is premised on phase one is a short-term strategy, is really to stabilize and survive. Scenario one is really around fending off a potential nasty situation with our creditors. And that required debt restructuring. And we've managed to do so with the support of our board. And this actually required a significant amount of negotiation. Yeah. And that sort of served as an interim solution for a potentially permanent problem. Now, what we've effectively done is we've amortized. So amortization basically means to understand what is the impact of this deal over a specific period of time. Yeah. So once you have an appreciation of where you're going to be from a financial perspective over a specific period of time, you're able to understand the impact of this deal on the deficit. So we realized it hasn't got much of an impact, hence the need to facilitate some sort of intervention from the shareholder. However, no shareholder is going to back you if you haven't gotten your ducks in a row. So over the past 8 months, we've been really preoccupied to understand how does that operating model look like. And that operating model, one needs to ensure that the bottom line returns are able to service whatever injection you're receiving. And there's a misconception. Yeah. You know, shareholder intervention comes in a variety of ways. There can be a capital injection, there can be a government-backed or sovereign guarantee. So the state would typically back your loan from a financier, whether it's a commercial bank or a development bank or whatever the case may be, depending on the term sheets, the most favorable term sheet. And that would put the organization in a stable position. But that doesn't take away from accountability. The organization needs to work to service that debt. And that can only be successful if you have a responsive operating model that is able to, one, reduce risk and exposure, two, offer the sort of returns that allow you to service the debt, and three, a model that is in line with the mandate for which the organization was created, essentially. And fourth, and most importantly, is a model that positions Namcor trading for long-term sustainability.
Yeah, yeah. What is the background, Mr. Ndeunyema, to this precarious situation, this delicate situation? Because I think as a commercial entity trading in a very lucrative industry, the impression was always that this is a profitable entity, it's making a lot of money. Of course, you've alluded to things like the internal controls, the lapses in that. But at a broader level, what is it that a company like that cannot do correctly just to be profitable?
Yeah. So Toivo, it's a very good question, because I think the public is very interested in how did we arrive at this juncture. Yeah. And I personally had to learn trading at a fairly rapid pace over the past few months, but nevertheless. So the name of the game is really to procure product from the international market at a competitive price and ensure that when that product lands, it's near BFP or less than BFP or pegged to BFP in some shape or form. Yeah. Now, BFP is what we refer to as the basic fuel price, which is also a baseline selling price for products in the domestic market. And obviously, if you sell in the export markets, that's unregulated. You can sell at whatever price, albeit it's highly competitive. So the challenge is that when you procure product from the international market, and remember the product takes some time, almost 20 to 30 days to get to its destination. There's a high possibility, in fact, more often than not, the BFP has changed. So you need some sort of trading desk to hedge against that risk, because there's a forex risk that is associated with that. And ordinarily, if you haven't got a trading desk, you need some sort of hedging instrument. And what we had proposed 3 years ago was a term deal. So we propose to enter into a supply term deal with the supplier. So remember that the supply term deal then becomes attractive because you locked yourselves into a term, and the supplier is guaranteed of certain volumes over a specific period.
Yeah.
Now, what you do with that term deal is you lock a price at a BFP minus. So whatever happens in the market, whether there's volatility, as we've seen with COVID-19, there was a significant volatility in the market when before we even started recovering from the aftermath of COVID-19,
Yeah.
Russia decided to invade Ukraine, and that just, the market just went bonkers. So ordinarily, when you procure from your suppliers, you procure at a BFP related price. So
Yeah.
the market, because of volatility, was not prepared to sell at a BFP related price. So it was their own independent price. So it was a fixed price. So you had to make a decision: do I buy and take that risk, or do I not buy and run the risk of running dry and not being able to service my customers and so forth? And if you don't have that hedging instrument, because that term deal and BFP peg term deal serves as a natural hedge. If you don't have that, it means you're exposed. And the reality is we did not have that. And certain decisions were made to procure a product at an exceptionally high price.
Yeah.
And it's more or less, three parcels of vessels that were procured of product that exposed the entity to such an exposure, essentially. So the name of the game is to procure at a competitive price and ensure that when that product lands, it's a BFP related price, either slightly above BFP or BFP flat, or ideally below BFP. But because of market volatility, you're highly unlikely going to receive a BFP minus price unless you obviously enter into some sort of a term deal. So that is, I think, probably the biggest weakness in that process, essentially.
Yeah. And then the internal element, and I know it's probably still premature to discuss its granular details, but what is the status of that investigation? Has a report been produced in that regard and been pointed to certain faces in the company, and that action will be taken? Because I was impressed that this week you decided to engage the media. I thought it was very, very important, especially for a company that is in a situation that you are in, to open yourself up to the media and say, look, let's talk, ask us whatever you want to, and we'll discuss. I think that is commendable. But regarding that investigation, what is the status?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Toivo. Toivo, the moment I accepted to act in this hot seat, immediately I accepted responsibility for past, future, and present challenges of the organization. And as you can appreciate, I've probably become the face of death now. But I think what is important is really to say that in as much as management has taken and the board has taken full accountability, there are processes in place to ensure that those that were responsible for exposing the entity to such significant risk and have made themselves guilty of breach of internal controls and governance processes are held accountable. So we could have held a press conference and said, those that were accountable is so and so, but we're not going to do that, and we don't intend on doing that, because an investigation was run, an independent investigation, and it has been concluded, and the entity is following the entity's human resource and disciplinary policies to ensure that those that have made themselves guilty are held accountable by way of fair disciplinary process, including those that have decided to leave the organization.
Yeah.
I think it's important that, you know, that message is driven home. Simply because you've resigned doesn't necessarily exonerate you from some of the damages you may have caused in the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So the irony of this whole situation, Mr. Ndeunyema, is that it comes at what many consider very exciting times for our country. The oil boom that is being talked about, and we thought Namcor would be the vehicle for our country now to really drive us to that destination. How are you going to do that in the face of the challenges that you have?
Yeah. So, Mr. Ndeunyema, Namcor is a powerhouse. The reason why most of us are still sitting at Namcor, the board is committed, management is committed, because of the mammoth task that Namcor is going to play in transforming the Namibian economy. I'm certainly convinced that Namcor is going to be one of the biggest entities in sub-Saharan Africa. And it's important to make a distinction where the challenge lies. There's a trading company, and we've got a couple of blown fuses, but we've got a flourishing E&P company in the upstream exploration space where the oil finds are sitting essentially. So the future is in great hands. We've got exceptionally good, committed, ethical petroleum engineers, geophysicists, geoscientists, who are working around the clock to make sure that the organization stands heads and shoulders above its competitors and unlocking the full potential of these finds. And I'm convinced once we're able to address the challenges in the trading company, and we've got a robust turnaround strategy to do so, we're well on our way. However, it's also important to point out this turnaround strategy is independent of an individual.
Yeah.
So even if I step down, and I will eventually, whoever comes into this role has a document to run with and has the backing of the team, and certainly myself and the board and the shareholder. Because challenges are part of growth.
Yeah.
Challenges are part of growth. And the challenges that Namcor faces is not unique to Namcor. Many organizations experience challenges, and I believe some are even worse than Namcor. But of course, you know, because of some of the challenges that we have, we become susceptible to public scrutiny, or a heightened level of public scrutiny, and we welcome that.
Yeah. What do you think will be the role of Namcor going forward? Because it's a commercial entity, and the inception, the very genesis of government saying, look, we need to have commercial entities, is so that they also meet government halfway in terms of dividend declaration and just carrying out roles that government itself as a central government cannot do. So now when you have an entity that was created for that purpose, going back to the mother, knocking on the door of the mother and saying, look, mom, we need billions of dollars or whatever the amount is for us to move forward, to crawl forward. What do you think is the role of the company now in the greater scheme of things as far as the national development agenda is concerned?
Yeah. So public enterprises by nature are an extension of government to provide a particular product or service to the market.
Yeah.
And the state has developed a very interesting policy document, the Public Enterprise Ownership Policy. Why, what, and when, and how the state should own public enterprises.
Yeah.
And there are essentially two reasons: either to deliver a particular public policy objective or serve a particular commercial objective. And Namcor serves a dual objective, albeit being a commercial public enterprise. We have a responsibility to ensure that the entity is sustainable and deliver returns for the state, whilst ensuring that we harness the hydrocarbon potential of Namibia. There have been conversations around our mandate in as far as security of supply of petroleum products is concerned, but in terms of the National Energy Policy of 2017, we contribute to security of supply of petroleum product. We don't have that exclusive mandate. but ordinarily you have Namcor as a strategic institution of state that is the custodian of all things oil and gas. And our mandate has always been in the upstream endeavor. I think the reason why we've gone into the trading space was to ensure that we have a strategic incubation vehicle that would generate sufficient returns to carry our upstream endeavor. So this was before we even had the discoveries. And remember, the upstream company is reliant on discretionary income. And you can't run a company on discretionary income. Yeah. You need some sort of vehicle that offers a stable financial environment. Of course, we can argue now, but the trading company has always been that big brother, if you like, while this younger brother has been growing. Now, this entity is flourishing and it's growing. And in fact, more often than not, this particular entity has bailed out the trading company over recent years. Our mandate really and our contribution to fiscus is really through the model that has been deployed by the Ministry of Mines and Energy in as far as the royalties campaign is concerned, in as far as government share is concerned, in terms of ensuring that we preserve the interest that the state has in these discoveries, and we facilitate these returns in the form of dividends, in the form of local content facilitation, and ensuring that during these discoveries we manage the process so that the state is able to accrue the sort of returns that are associated with these discoveries in the medium to long term.
Yeah, sure. We go for a very quick break and then return with Shiwana Ndeunyema.
Neo Paints has established a 67-year Namibian legacy, creating personalized paint solutions that blend quality and innovation for the Namibian people. We pride ourselves in being a 100% Namibian-owned company, investing in our country and our people by employing and empowering true Namibians. With every brushstroke, Neo Paints commits to our quality guarantee and always delivering a coat of excellence. At Neo Paints, we always stay true to our country. We are as Namibian as you.
E-Ticket, your online ticket solution for events and event marketing, bringing you ease of mind and making sure that your event gets out there. For more information, contact events@nmh.com.na.
Welcome to My.NA Cars, your ultimate destination for everything automotive.
I am your host, Diana Master. Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Discover the latest models, innovative technologies, and expert insights from our passionate hosts. Learn essential maintenance tips and get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to the automotive industry. Don't miss My.NA Cars on NTV every Thursday at 2100 hours. Tune in and ignite your passion for automobiles.
The conversation continues on the agenda. Now, Shiwana, the other thing that has made a lot of headlines this year is Namcor's your deal with Sonangol in Angola, where you want to acquire a stake in some of their oil blocks there. There's been a lot of talks about the deposit of money that was made and how much more you needed to top up in order to seal the deal. And I don't see how that will be pulled off under the circumstances.
Yeah. So of course, Toivo, these are sensitive issues.
Yes.
And no entity wants to be associated with an entity that is going through issues relating to governance.
Yeah.
For us, we've been proactive in engaging our partners in that regard to give them the sort of assurance that is required to carry the deal through. We are comfortable with where the deal is at this point in time. And this deal is very important to us because when we developed the strategy, the Namcor strategy, we looked at what the problem was, because the argument was always when you develop strategy, you need to design solutions for challenges and opportunities for the future. And we had identified a singular fundamental challenge, and that was that Namcor was facing an existential threat because we were so reliant on the fuel levy. One such strategy, which is quite heavily articulated, is the retail network expansion, and the other was around the profitability of our downstream operations in terms of how we go about our trading activities.
Yeah.
And the other singular strategic initiative was really the acquisition of oil, or near to oil producing assets in politically stable jurisdictions. And this is how we found ourselves looking at opportunities in the Angolan oil fields. So it is important for the sustainability of the entity, and we're quite excited. Sonangol is an exceptional partner of Namcor, and we enjoy exceptional bilateral relations at governmental level, the Namibian and Angolan government. And it has received the blessing of the shareholder, so that support is there. But you're quite correct. These issues have the potential to create discomfort, and we're managing it.
Yeah. Prior to the break, you said something to the effect that your involvement in the retail segment of the industry was to partially create some sort of stable supply of income to the entity, so that you really support your upstream activities. But now we are hearing that Cabinet has directed that your retail segment be sort of closed down, your filling stations and stuff like that. What was the reason advanced to Namcor by Cabinet in that regard? What is the rationale? Because I thought it was a good thing to do.
So I'm not sure which cabinet resolution are you referring to?
I don't know if it's, we reported in Namibian Sun maybe a week, 2 weeks ago that, as a matter of fact, the Minister of Mines and Energy, Tom Alwend, was quoted in Namibian Sun advancing reasons why Namcor shouldn't be involved in that at that level. So I think there are still deliberations at cabinet level, but there's no directive per se.
All right. Yeah. Then I think then we're on the same page.
Yeah.
There's no directive as of yet. There are deliberations.
Yeah.
So I think the concern has always been around competitive neutrality, where you have a state-owned enterprise that is competing with the private sector and is funded by the state, and you're receiving a fuel levy, and you're competing with the private sector, and it presents arguments around competitive neutrality in as far as being a player and referee is concerned. And our argument was to say that, look, why don't we build the sort of retail network that would give us the sort of critical mass to absorb the fuel levy and wean ourselves off the fuel levy. And then there's no state funding of Namcor in that regard, and then we can compete with the private sector. But then again, there are also concerns to say, look, even if we remove the fuel levy, you are still a state-owned enterprise, and when you are in trouble, the state will come and back you. And then our initial argument was to say, look, just as any private company has a shareholder, we've probably lost that battle, and we're comfortable It only makes sense that, you know, if there's an expectation from the public or the shareholder, that we honor that expectation. But there's no position as of yet. But there are those concerns around competitive neutrality and crowding out of the private sector by the state-owned enterprises, specifically in the retail space. So Namibia, by virtue of Article 98, is a mixed economy, state and private sector participation. And I think the argument around private sector is still, in my personal view, still immature. It's not a matured conversation, because you can argue that when you talk of the private sector, are you talking about truly indigenous Namibian companies, or are you talking about local international marketing companies or local international companies? In the retail space, you've got local international marketing companies. Yes, they're private, but does that make it truly Namibian entities? And Namcor is a truly Namibian entity. As far as retail is concerned, albeit it's owned by the state. It's run by Namibians, it's owned by a Namibian state, and it serves the Namibian interest, and it contributes to Namibian fiscus, whereas, you know, some other entities in the private sector ship out the profits to, you know, their parent company sitting somewhere in the West. So I think it's a argument that really needs to be fleshed out, and I'm hopeful that the ownership policy that has been developed by the state will assist in that regard.
How much of a knock would that development have on your bottom line? If you depart that segment of the market, how much of a knock would that be?
Right. So I've indicated that we've developed a turnaround strategy. And in the turnaround strategy, we've presented a couple of operating models with their associated financial models and cash flow forecasts to demonstrate how certain decisions will impact our top line, middle line, and bottom line. And the retail agenda, if you elect to withdraw from the retail space, you know, you need to have an alternative revenue stream, and we've identified that. So we've painted a couple of scenarios that speak towards a sustainable Namcor trading entity. But no decision is going to be made, I would love to believe, if there's no alternative to that sort of revenue. And what we really believe in, if that decision is taken, is a responsible withdrawal from the retail space. Should that be the decision, that there's a responsible withdrawal. We've got retail service stations, we've got you know, agreements with our dealers, you know, we've got a brand to protect, we've got contracts, we've got customers to supply, whether it's on a commercial B2B or the retail space, and we need to be responsible in that regard.
Let's talk about the booming oil industry now that is being talked about. Namcor has carried interest in some of these deposits. Namibians anticipate a situation where their national oil company will incrementally grow its stake in some of these entities or deposits. Is that the ambition? And if so, how will that happen if under the current circumstances? Or would you say, look, we are in trouble now financially, and therefore we will only limit ourselves to the carried interest?
Thank you, Toivo. Toivo, the financial implications of upstream completely dwarf that of the trading company. So the activities happening in the trading company is nothing compared to the financial you know, implications associated with the upstream agenda. The capital outlay that is required for upstream projects is just out of this world. To drill a well, a single well, is in excess of 100 million US. And you need to have an exceptional appetite for that sort of risk. So that sort of space is high risk, high reward. So we obviously carry, the state's interest, and of course there's varying degrees of interest. I think the most common is 10%, because we also have 10% in the recent discoveries, and then this has been obviously much publicized. But there are other assets where Namcor has 60, 80%, and even 100%. It's just how we monetize, and the idea is really to identify prospective investors with access to capital to come and explore in these licensed blocks. And that requires Namcor to dilute some of its interest, or the state's interest on behalf of the state, so that exploration activity can take place. So what we do is we partner with broadband technology operators to conduct, so we shoot seismic data, we acquire the seismic data and we sell it to our partners or to prospective investors, and so we basically sell prospectivity. And in order to entice an investor, there needs to be some sort of return, and that return is really in the interest that they have. So it doesn't make sense if you're not putting up much that you carry the most interest. Of course, I recognize it's a very sensitive discussion for the public, because you have to be in the space really to understand why certain decisions are being made. But because of the capital intensiveness of such operations, you don't have much appetite. However, because of the recent activities and the interest in the Orange Basin, there are conversations around how do we, increase our stake. But you must remember that when you enter into a petroleum agreement with, the operator, typically, there's what we refer to as stabilization clauses. So there must be mutual consent on both sides to dilute interest. But there's definitely an interest and appetite if there's the capital to acquire additional interest. But the aim is really to ensure that you have a stable regime. And the moment you upset that, before you even get to first oil, you can have a resource curse before the resource is even out of the ground.
Yeah. Do you think, Ms. Ndeunyema, that in the 8 months that you've been acting as head of Namcor, that these screaming headlines around the entity, around personalities in the entity, your substantive MD is on suspension since April or March there. Do you think that there is an element of distraction in these things from what you really want to focus on as an organization? Because now you're in the boardroom trying to hammer out strategies to get the company out of the ditch, and then you have Shiwana Ndeunyema calling, looking for details about, is the MD still on suspension? How long is the extension of the suspension? What is your status are they extending your acting contract and stuff like that? Did you find yourself in that murky space?
Yes. It's not a good space to be in. As an organization, as an individual, I'm sure the shareholder is certainly not excited about it. You need a stable organization with stable leadership. Once you have an individual acting for so long, it creates uncertainty within the organization, not only within the staff, because it may attract attrition, and staff morale may be dwindled, and your partners may sort of register a concern over time that things are not moving at the pace at which they would. So it's in everybody's enlightened self-interest to ensure that you have a speedy investigation and there's some sort of normalcy in the organization. And to answer your question, it definitely has, because you become an easy target when there's that turbulence in the organization. Interests easily penetrate, for whatever reason, including the media. You become just vulnerable and susceptible because you've got that cloud hovering over your head. So I think the shareholder, the board, the management, the staff, myself as interim MD, I'm really looking forward to seeing this cloud to its logical conclusion in whatever shape or form. I think it's just in the best interest of the organization. At the end of the day, it's Namcor that should come first, and then that's the primary reason why we came out to the public through the media to issue that media press conference to say, look, these are the challenges we're facing. This is how we got here. This is what we're doing about it. Rest assured there will be accountability, and hold us accountable.
Yeah. You, at a personal level, you are deemed a rising star in the corporate world, in the local corporate fraternity, and you just sarcastically said earlier that you have sort of become the face of death now, because whenever there's a Namcor story about all these things, your face accompanies these stories. Do you sometimes say, what on God's green earth did I get myself into? Do you have moments where you just want to return to your substantive position as head of business development? Or do you think this is an opportunity for me to defy the odds and actually thrive?
That's a very good question, and it's a personal question. So I think when I was called to duty by the board, and obviously it was very sensitive, because I enjoy a very good professional relationship with my substantive MD. It's important that you manage perceptions also. So it was a little uncomfortable, but for me it was always putting the organization first, Namcor above everything else, because I recognize and realize the role this entity will play in the not so distant future. And mark my words, Toivo, Namcor is really going to be a powerhouse. And then we've built up, and I have just been there a little over 2 years. But what I found there is a brand and a force to be reckoned with. There are challenges that are self-made. There are challenges that are external. But Namcor is definitely a force to be reckoned with. I've embraced the challenge. There was a time I thought of throwing in the towel because, I realized that am I really moving towards a position where Namcor is first? And those few issues were resolved, and we continued rallying behind the strategy. I certainly have a committed board. I have a committed executive management. I've always told my executive management to say, let's develop a strategy that is independent of Shiwana, that is independent of any ExCo member, that is independent of the board, that can withstand the test of time. And I think we've managed to do that, provided that we have this sort of shareholder intervention. We start off on a clean slate and allow the organization to move towards a position of long-term sustainability. I'm very happy with the decision that I made to accept. I was initially hesitant, and I think everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And those that know the truth would appreciate that Namcor over the past 8 months has really done its best to ensure that the company does not go down the drain.
Absolutely. Mr. Ndeunyema, thank you very much for coming to the platform, availing yourself at a very, very difficult time. That speaks to your bravery and fortitude. We wish you the best. The challenge that you have, part of it is that you are a very young man, and you are the poster boy now by default of young people's aspirations, because there's always this huge debate in our country that oh, you must give young people opportunities. We saw at the SWAPO Youth League last week, or this last weekend, saying the party must reserve 15% of positions and seats in parliament, for example, for young people, because and when a person like yourself succeed, then I'm hoping the leadership, the elders will realize that indeed young people are ready to lead. So you are the poster boy of youth empowerment, and we just want to thank you for your time and wish you the best.
I thank you for your time, Toivo, and everything of the very best.
Thank you, sir. That is Shiwana Ndeunyema. He is acting MD of Namcor, speaking to us about the issues and the vision and the strategies that are in place to get Namcor back to the top. Thank you for watching.
Neo Paints has established a 67-year Namibian legacy, creating personalized paint solutions that blend quality and innovation for the Namibian people. We pride ourselves in being a 100% Namibian-owned company, investing in our country and our people by employing and empowering true Namibians. With every brushstroke, Neo Paints commits to our quality guarantee and always delivering a coat of excellence. At Neo Paints, we always stay true to our country. We are as Namibian as you.
E-Ticket, your online ticket solution for events and event marketing, bringing you ease of mind and making sure that your event gets out there. For more information, contact events@nmh.com.na.